Good afternoon. My name is Jason Chavez, and I'm the chair of the Committee of the Whole. I'm going to call to order our regular committee meeting for Tuesday, November 12th. Before we begin the meeting, I want to offer a friendly reminder to all members, staff, and the public that these meetings are broadcast live to enable greater public participation. These broadcasts include real-time captioning as a further method to increase the accessibility of our proceedings to the community. Therefore, all speakers need to be mindful of the rate of their speech so that our captioners can fully capture and transcribe all comments for the broadcast. We ask all speakers to moderate the speed and clarity of their comments. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll to verify the presence of a quorum.
Councilmember Payne.
Present.
Wansley is absent. Rainville is absent. Vita.
Present.
Ellison is absent. Osman is absent. Cashman.
Present.
Jenkins.
Present.
Chugtai.
Present.
Koski.
Present.
Palmazano.
Present.
Vice Chair Chowdhury.
Present.
And Chair Chavez.
Present.
There are 9 members present.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. Today we have 6 items on the agenda in addition to our reports of committees that have met this cycle. Item number 2 is from our settlement agreement and consent decree oversight subcommittee, and I will turn the meeting over to President Payne as the chair of that committee for that portion of the meeting. I'll also add that this meeting must conclude by 4 p.m. today so that the notice meeting of the Planning Commission can meet later this afternoon. We will start by receiving public comment related to the city's actions in the case involving Davis Matori and John Sawchuk. Before I proceed to open the public comment period, I want to review a few procedural matters. If you have written comments or materials to submit, please give those to the clerk on either side at the registration table or at the end of the dais. We also have printed comment forms available at the registration table if you'd like to submit a comment on this proposal and have that included in the public record of this matter. I would also encourage everyone to take advantage of submitting your comments in other ways. The easiest way to submit your comments and ensure they are added to the public record is to send those from the city's website at minneapolismn.gov/public comment. All submitted comments will be included in the public record related to the city's actions in the cases in this case. We will be taking speakers in the order that they are registered. If you would like to testify, I invite you to register your name with the clerks at the table in the hallway outside this chamber. Every speaker should have an assigned number. We will be calling speakers by number. Because we are limited on available seating in this room, there is an overflow room where the public can monitor this meeting. If you're registered to speak but aren't able to sit in the chamber, please head toward the chamber as we get close to your speaker number. Each registered speaker will be given 2 minutes to address the committee. We have a timer available to help speakers monitor their use of time. We ask that you wrap up your comments before your time has expired so that we can accommodate all speakers today. We also ask that everyone be respectful of all speakers and all opinions offered. I understand that we have 20 people already registered to speak. Again, before I open the floor, I'll invite anyone who hasn't already registered who wishes to speak to register with the clerks at the table in the hallway outside this chamber. We'll ask each speaker to self-identify for the public record before you begin your comments. With that, we're ready to open the public hearing. The first 5 speakers who are registered to speak are, and I'll get a list. No worries, we're getting the list, but we have 20 people at least at a minimum already signed up. So thank you all for being here. Thank you. All right. First person on the list is Howard Dotson. And then we're going to have Brenda Short, Dave Bicken, Janet Nye, and then Jake Luna. Howard.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. I have shared with you the safety pins. There are here. I invite every council member to consider wearing a safety pin. After the first election, we bore this pin as a sign of solidarity. This came from the UK Brexit, when the Pakistani community felt like they had bullseyes of hate upon them. So it's time to bring the safety pin back as we face some challenging times and people feeling not safe. So I've been a police chaplain for 4 departments from 2002 to 2017. With that perspective, I've watched Chief O'Hara on this journey since before he was even sworn in. We need Chief O'Hara to stay the course, what we're going through with the consent decree, with the state court-ordered reforms. And it can feel cathartic to make a statement, but there needs to be an investigation. There needs to be due process, and I'm confident that whatever they find in disciplinary actions will be executed by Chief O'Hara and his leadership. I was over in St. Paul one day, and I heard from their leadership there that they bring folks to ERs for psych beds, and the average wait is 25 hours. Without a civil commitment, there's limitations of what law enforcement can do with folks that are struggling with mental health. Our mental health care system is broken. This is connected to the encampments. It's connected to this tragic situation. So I applaud the council members' efforts to look at tangible solutions. Councilmember Jenkins, your town hall was spot on. So I just encourage people to stay the course, and the truth will prevail.
Thank you. I also want to note for the public record that we've been joined by Councilmember Wansley. Next up, we have Brenda Short.
Good afternoon. It's been 4 years, 5 months, and 18 days since George Floyd passed away in the city of Minneapolis. Again, for the people in the back, it's been 4 years, 5 months, and 18 days since George Floyd died in the city of Minneapolis. I can't understand how we let another black man feel unsafe in the city of Minneapolis. We knew better, but we still are not doing better. You ask us, what action should we do? Today, I'm asking for take both of them out. Take the mayor. He took the chance on the chief. He needs to go. And the chief knew what was happening. He was over all of these people. And he still stood on what he stood. He made a statement that he didn't want to go to this man's house. But if it was the tables was turned and the people was black, that door would have been open. I'm tired of being scared in my own neighborhood. I'm tired of us not being heard. I am tired. We're sick and tired. Enough is enough is enough. Thank you. My name is Brenda Short. I'm running for mayor for this city. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Next up, we have Dave Bicking. And then Janet Nye, Jake, Erica Thorne, and then Angel.
Thank you for this opportunity to present to the meeting on behalf of Communities United Against Police Brutality. My name is Dave Bicking, Ward 8. On October 31st, a coalition of police accountability organizations submitted a demand for an independent third-party investigation into the MPD handling of the Solchak matter by a police practices expert selected by the community. The City Council approved a request to the city auditor to undertake an investigation. We wish to speak to the parameters of this investigation. We emphasize that while the proposal is for the city auditor's office to oversee the investigation, it must be conducted by an independent police practices expert who is neutral and with no history of prior contracts with the city. This precludes such groups as Hillard Hines, Jensen Hughes, Jones Day, Wiley Reber, Antonio Oftali with Leadership for a Networked World, and others. John Solchak terrorized and attacked his neighbors since at least 2016. Much of his conduct was based on racism towards neighbors of color, including Mr. Motori. Neighbors reported dozens of incidents to police, prompting 10 petitions for harassment restraining orders, 5 other criminal complaints, and 3 arrest warrants. At one point, Salchak slashed the tires on an MPD squad car and pointed the knife at a police officer, but not arrested. Despite this repeated criminal conduct and outstanding warrants, Salchak was not arrested. One commander told the Motori family they would not arrest Mr. Salchak due to, quote, officer safety, unquote, leaving the family and neighbors to fend for themselves against this dangerous conduct.
We appreciate your time. The
Jan and
next
I will finish
person
out our comments.
that we
Thank you.
have is Janet, and just for the public, I'll let folks go over 5 seconds, but after that, I will be calling on the next person. I really do appreciate your time here today. Welcome, Janet, and thanks for your testimony, Dave.
Yes.
The repeated failure to address Mr. Sawchak's conduct culminated in his attempted murder of his neighbor, Mr. Muturi. Mr. Muturi survived, but is still recovering from his serious injuries. Hennepin County Attorney Moriarty secured a warrant for Sawchak's arrest the next day. Yet even after the shooting his neighbor, Mr. Sawchak remained comfortably in his apartment for 5 days. Throughout that time, Chief O'Hara made repeated excuses as to why police had failed to arrest Sawchak during numerous contacts with him prior to the shooting, then blamed the community, the Hennepin County attorney, and even the victim for the MPD's failure to arrest him even after the shooting. Members of the city administration either remained silent or repeated the excuses. In essence, rather than addressing the problem, city leaders engaged in public relations damage control efforts. Finally, in response to community pressure on the evening, October 27, 28, Minneapolis police engaged in a dangerous and disruptive nighttime warrant service, and Mr. Sawchak was arrested. The repeated failures in the Sawchak matter point to multiple issues with MPD culture and individual accountability, as well as systemic failures. In any field, critical incidents such as this matter provide the imperative and opportunity to identify these deficiencies, determine accountability, and develop and implement solutions to prevent similar incidents. But this can only happen as a result of a thorough independent evaluation by experts. It is for these reasons that we have called for an investigation by an independent third-party police practices expert without a past relationship with the city. The necessary investigation cannot be conducted internally because it includes examination of conduct and decisions by individuals in leadership within the MPD and the city. There is a need to be thorough. There is equally a need to be timely. We are concerned with the proposed timeline of a completion date of June 2025. This timeline prolongs the injustice suffered by the Muturi family and their neighbors and leaves open a risk that a similar incident could occur in another neighborhood before preventive measures are implemented. We urge the city's auditor's office to assign this matter to the highest priority. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Next up, we have Jake, Luna, Erica Thorne, Angel, Viewmaster, and I did want to recognize Councilmember Rainbow's presence.
Is this a good distance? I want to start off with a little story. When I was simply too young to understand the gravity of these situations, at 11 years old, our community, our entire country, was given a systematic trauma by the murdering of Philando Castile in our very own city of Minneapolis. A few years later, I, at the age of 15, finally able to recognize the gravity of the situation. One day after I turned 15, George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis. Now, on October 24th, just a few weeks ago, new generations have had to go through what I went through. They've had to inherit this systematic generational trauma, and they will continue to inherit more due to these furthering of the hate crimes if we do not stop them. This is my reality. This is the reality I was born into. My reality is school shootings being a regular occurrence. My reality is seeing black people being shot for no more reason than just existing. My reality is the MPD often doing either much too little or much too much. Whether it is taking almost a year to respond, or it is murdering black people over petty offenses. How many more people must die until we acknowledge this? How many more people must die until Mayor Frey, who is not here, will take accountability and allow for us to be saying that this is political? This is a political issue. I and others have already been traumatized. Very likely everyone in this room has been traumatized by these situations. But we can stop future generations from being traumatized the same way I was. We can stop them from losing community members, from losing friends, from losing family. We can stop this generational trauma from being passed down to a new generation. We can stop them from being burdened by this every single day for the rest of their lives. Because if we do not step up, if we do not tell the MPD that they do not have this jurisdiction, that they cannot do this, that they must protect and they must serve, then we will all be doomed. Real soon.
Thank you. Next up, we have Erica. Then we have Angel Bumaster, Janelle, Stacy.
Hey, I listened to the radio like 1 or 2 days after the grievous shooting of Mr. Marturi, and may he be fully healed. And I heard our police chief say on the radio, well, you got to understand our position. If we had taken action before, we'd be faulted. We waited to take action, now we're being faulted. You know, Chief, we don't need you to whine. That's right. You are here to work on the MPD to make it more effective, while also retaining their humanity and stopping being systematically racist to me, my neighbors, and everyone who lives here. That's what we need from you. And because I have the mic, I'm happy to have it. I just want to encourage and really ask very seriously for you and the council to hear the community group that is working on the future of George Floyd Square, to listen to us, to incorporate all the great work we've done, and give us a chance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Angel. Welcome.
Good afternoon. What I'd like to say is thank you to the Minneapolis Police Department, the 1% that was out there on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and today, cleaning up 2 streets, 2 encampments. There's just a little bit of change that's going on, so I had to say something positive about that, because it is happening. Shout out to Care 11 and Star and Tribune. But in all reality, it's like this gentleman over here who told this story is absolutely right. My grandkids are going through the same thing. And it's unacceptable. Right. Everywhere it's unacceptable. I'd like to take the rest of this time, the 1 minute and 20 seconds, to reflect on all the people that we have lost, especially from the opiate addiction. And you all have a good day. Thank you.
We can keep the clock going. Yeah. Thank you. Welcome, Janelle.
Good afternoon. My name is Janelle Austin. I live in Bryant neighborhood in Ward 8 near George Floyd Square. I want to begin by quoting a CBS News article that read, Matori is now hoping that this attack could very well have taken his life, that this attack that could have very well taken his life is what it will take to finally get some justice. It should not take a near-death experience or a death, as in the case of George Floyd, to finally get something that looks like justice. As Black people in Minnesota, we are tired of being subject to the forces of white supremacy that do not allow us to live in peace. So when we march and cry, no justice, no peace, it is in part because the absence of our justice means that we do not even get to live in peace. This reality is also why in George Floyd Square, we say no justice, no streets. I have a neighbor who at 3:30 this morning suffered from his front steps being set on fire by a known perpetrator of setting fires, who is being tracked by MFD. But because he either has to volunteer to receive preventative intervention or commit a severe infraction or a crime to be stopped, he continues to threaten the safety of our neighbors. The police system is broken. We know this. The DOJ showed us this. Justice means that Black people do not have to ask over and over and over again to be protected by a police system that my mother calls Operation How Do You Like Them Apples. Whatever Mr. Matori asks for from the city, he should get and then some. And you need to fix the system or dismantle it altogether and start over, letting Black people decide what safety looks like, because apparently not until Black people in Minneapolis feel safe will we all be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Stacy. Then we have Anna and then Marsha. Stacy, hi. Sorry, I'll speak louder. Thank you, Stacy. It's good to see you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm Stacy Gurian Sherman. I'm a resident of Ward 9, and I'm also one of the founders and steering committee members of Minneapolis for a Better Police Contract. Thank you to the City Council for scheduling this public comment on the shooting of Mr. Davis Morturi as a result of what Jelani Hussein, Executive Director of CARE Minnesota, has rightly called, quote, epic failures of MPD. These failures are not episodic, but as we know from both state and federal investigations, they are systemic. 4 years after the torture and murder of Mr. Floyd, we see the culture continues that allows for Mr. Matori's to keep happening. And we see this in excruciating detail from Mr. Matori's own emails, and we have these emails thanks to Celeste Robinson and Liam Temple, City Council staff, so thank you to them. Here is what Mr. Matori sent to MPD on October 17th, 5 days before he was shot, and 3 days after Mr. Shawshank pointed a firearm at him. Quote, this is about the 4th or 5th incident with a weapon I've reported and probably the 30th time I've called 911. It continues to get more and more violent by the day. I am not confident in the pursuit of Shawshank, given that he was detained, and despite warrants, they still let him go. Mr. Matori went on to talk about and send an email that said, am I not human like you? How in the world do you have somebody say that and then be shot because of the people that are meant to protect? I want to thank the City Council for connecting the dots and having on this agenda the report on the civil unrest, the George Floyd Square matter, and issues with ALIFA. ALIFA is holding its first public comments, or supposedly tomorrow, but they put out a press release 5 days ago that says, quote, there will be no public input at these meetings. I have their press release, and I have synopsises of stories for the record I'd like to submit for the record. We need to have input, and we need to have it now.
We have Anna,
thank you.
21, Marsha, 22, Bobby, 23, Nikema, number 24, and then Keith, number 25. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Anna Newcomb, and I live in the Lindale neighborhood, and in fact, I have lived most of my 64 years in the alley behind John Shawcheck. And I am here to publicly state that not only did the police fail our neighborhood, they failed Mr. Maturi in a way that is hard to comprehend. John has terrorized our neighborhood for years. I do not use that term lightly. Our fear is that he will be released again to our community or another community. Yes, John has mental health issues. None of these issues prevent him from planning, from carrying out systematic acts of terrorism and aggression. He is not a new problem in our neighborhood. I have been on the LNA board. I have been on the Crime and Safety Committee. Nothing happens. Why? And my neighbor, 70-plus years old, was threatened by John with a 2x4. Were we notified that he had a gun? She is in direct sight from his window into hers. Was anybody notified that this man has a gun and is shooting it? We heard about the incident of Mr. Maturi from the news. This is disgusting, and it really has to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Marcia.
Hello. I often say that no matter what kind of budget constraints we have, the city's coffers are limitless when it comes to being able to hurt black folks. And I'm going to tell you why I think that now in the incident with Mr. Maturi. My daughter lives directly across the street from Mr. Sawcheck. He has terrorized that neighborhood for years, and I'm different from everybody. It ain't even about Brian O'Hara. It's been years. Y'all, if you want to know why they didn't go in there, his apartment is not hermetically sealed. It's because the city of Minneapolis always needs a boogeyman. They always need a bad guy to justify the police budget. They always need to be able to say, here we come to save the day. And that was a way for them to keep them liberals in the Lyndhurst neighborhood from needing them. Y'all don't miss the water till the well runs dry. But what happens when the person that they thought was just crazy but relatively harmless actually commits harm? Right. Y'all, he was a homeowner. The man owned property. But did you notice nobody said these crimes were committed near property? Now, if it had been an encampment, they would have said it was near an encampment. If it had been near George Floyd Square, they would have said it was near George Floyd Square. But my daughter was army crawling days before he was arrested and sending me video because I trained her well. Days before, there were police out there with long arms. Before he actually got arrested, I got all the video, and I've been good. I ain't put it online yet. And I'm telling you now, if Charlie Mack can get $30,000 for the grief and pain of witnessing George Floyd's death, what about all the neighbors in the Lyndhurst neighborhood? Y'all, the taxpayers are about to be paying up. So prepare.
Thank you. Welcome, Bobby. Then we have Nakima, Keith, and Kay. Bobby, then it's you, Nakima. And then we have Keith, and then Kay.
I'm Bobby Hall. I live in the central neighborhood. I am George Floyd Square chairman of the board, liaison. And I've been fighting the police department since 1992 when the Mike Kirchson turned his headlights off and ran my son over and then beat him up. And then he got promoted after he ran the second kid over with Charles Belton's bodyguard and chauffeur. Robert Olson said, lack of evidence. We can't find the bike he ran over. They dismissed the case after they found him guilty. They paid my son $13,000 for both knees being broken. Then How do you have a police officer that beats kids up after they run them over? I asked for police reform back then. We asked for help with the police department since 1992. And what did they do? They promoted him. They expunged his record. And this is how we do all of our police officers. How many officers need to stop and get reviewed and find out how many of these are criminals? You turn your headlights off and you run a kid over that's premeditated vehicular homicide. Why did he get a promotion? And why are you still on the same page with your police officers? They are criminals and crooks, and you don't want to do a survey on them. You did a 4-year, 5-month survey on the George Floyd Square to give us a building, a community building. We got a community building. It's a bathroom. You only use 20% of the building. Let's take public domain and take that building back, and let's take the money for the George Floyd Square and reform the police department. Let's do a survey on you. You spent all that money on us. Let's do a survey on you. You're the problem, not us. You make us the bad guys,
Bobby.
and you promote these people. These police
Bobby.
officers are killing us.
Thanks, Bobby. Next up,
put
we
it in
have
your hat.
Nikema.
And this ain't my first time up here talking to y'all.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for giving us space on the agenda today to talk about these issues. I'm sure that all of you are aware that we have continued problems with the Minneapolis Police Department. Of course, Mayor Jacob Fry should be here. Of course, Chief Brian O'Hara should be here. And the new commissioner, Todd Barnett, should be here as well to hear what the public has to say, to hear their frustration. I am one of those folks who's calling for the chief to be fired. I'm not going to give him a pass because he knew the job that he was signing up for, and that was to help reform the culture of the Minneapolis Police Department. And instead of him exhibiting the kind of leadership that we asked for, we've had to deal with lies from him, from when he sat in the room while Tyler Timberlake, an officer in Virginia who had kicked a defenseless black man after George Floyd, wound up costing the city money, and guess what? He got hired by Chief Brian O'Hara at the Minneapolis Police Department. That is a problem when we're talking about a cultural shift. And then today some news came out that Lou Bellamy's family settled a lawsuit with Hennepin County for $3.4 million. Lou Bellamy was a black man in this community, the family of the folks who founded Penumbra Theater, one of the powerful theaters in our state and in our country, and they let that man die, right? The problem, though, aside from the fact that the condition was treatable, is the fact that a deputy by the name of Lucas Weatherspoon sat there smiling as Lou Bellamy was writhing in pain. Earlier this year, we wrote an op-ed in the Star Tribune, and we pointed out that Lucas Weatherspoon had been hired by the Minneapolis Police Department. So tell me, how is that going to lead to a cultural change when the same thing happens over and over again? We want to see justice and accountability, and the chief must go.
Thank you. Welcome up. Hi, Keith.
Council President Chavez, council persons, thank you for giving me a chance to speak. I find it outrageous that a department that has a $230 million plus budget, who's asking for 26 more million, can't do their job. And it's not just this one incident. For example, Sawchuk gets over a year on just this particular case, and yet Amir Locke, who wasn't on any warrant, who wasn't involved in any crime, got 6 seconds from when they kicked in the door. That's right. A black man. Travis Jordan, who was sitting in his own home, called out by police, shot. Native. Cheshire Vu, sitting in his own home, mental health crisis. They fired over 54 shots at that man and killed him, Asian. So why is it that they can take their sweet time for Mr. Sawchuk, who has 16 years of assault with weapons history, including his own family, including Minneapolis Police Department, and they're going to knock on the door? Come on now.
Thank you. Next, we have number 26K. And then number 27, Kelly. Number 28, Ray Kirch.
My name is Kay. My grandmother suffered at the hands of a CIA-backed government. CIA will go into foreign countries, support the worst types of riffraff they can find. It's no surprise when I look in my backyard and I see a man with a history of assault, a history of horrific actions against black and brown people in his neighborhood, let free, ignored. The crimes that he does go unheard, the pain that he brings unpunished. It's unacceptable, but more than that, has a lot of precedent. So keep up the same work y'all been doing. You know, keep it up, keep it up. We all know what it is. We all know what it is, and we here, we ready. You know, we gonna keep coming. We don't need to be here begging for dignity from an institution complicit in our deaths, in our imprisonment, in our slander. That's all I got. Let's leave the rest of the time for the people who have passed.
I'm sorry, number 19. My name wasn't called.
You're still on the list. I called the wrong numbers, but like the list is still in order.
Yeah. Okay, so who's next?
Next up we have Kelly, then Ray Kurt, then Jenny, and then Eliza.
Hi, my name is Kelly Joyce. I live 4 blocks from where this incident happened. And the only phrase that I keep running through my mind is no good cops in a racist system. And I don't take that phrase lightly. I'm an engineer. I know all about systems. I'm in charge of product safety. And when something goes wrong with my product, I'm dragged into court. My company's dragged into court. We're fined. And we're required to tear down the very system that created that product. When I think about corrective action and preventative action, I see none of these actions in the MPD. I see a huge broken system that can't be fixed. And I know all about broken systems that can't be fixed. You have to rebuild it. You have to start over. It's not going to work investigating. It's not going to work auditing. It's not going to work firing the chief of police because another racist chief of police is going to come along. No good cops in a racist system.
Thank you. Number 18, Ray Kurt Johnson. Number 19, Jenny Jones. Number 20, Eliza Wesley. 18, Ray Kurt. And then 19, yes, Jenny. And then 20, Eliza.
My name is Ray Kurt Johnson. I'm every black man. I'm all of that. Anything you can think of, I've done that. I'm on a musical solidarity tour from Washington, D.C. I've traveled the world making music here and there and everywhere, and I've landed here in Minneapolis. It's a beautiful place. It really is. Beautiful people, and but the system is the system. And I appreciate, the city in progress from addressing, at least acknowledging, the systematic killing of black people and everybody else, and it's nationwide, but we can complain about it. I've come up with some solutions, just end qualified immunity. If you just end that, and then they would be accountable. And they got to raise more money. We love money. Oh, everybody love money. So they can pay for their liability insurance like every other professional. Imagine that. We love our jobs. We want to be professional. If you just approach it that way, maybe there's a little bit of accountability, and we can spread some more love. It's all about that. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. 19, Jenny. 20, Eliza.
Thank you for hearing me today. I want to talk about George Floyd Square. When city officials on city time murder a man, it is not up to the city. They do not have the moral authority to decide how that man is memorialized, nor how that epicenter of a global justice movement looks. This effort must be community-led. What the city can do is provide the integrative health services and housing for the neighborhood that were asked for when Councilmember Jenkins asked, what does justice look like? There is no rush to reconstruct this street and erase what happened. It is not about the majority of opinion, it is about doing what is right. We have one shot to get this right, and we are moving at the speed of justice.
Thank you. Eliza, number 20. And then we'll have number 21, Yolanda, number 22, Julia, number 23, John Thompson.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eliza Wesley, better known as AKA Gatekeeper at George Floyd Square. I want to say today to you guys got us here, you listen to us. But I tell people all the time that you guys write things on a piece of paper. That's what's important to you guys, the piece of paper. You send the paper out, you make sure we don't get the paper because y'all think black folks don't read. But I began to learn to read about you guys. I'm originally from Greenville, Mississippi, where Minnesota is not so nice. Y'all slavery under the rug. That's what we got here. The white men are slaving our black peoples. Not only that, you guys are trained to target black peoples. When you go to the gun range, and I keep telling everybody, you don't see a white man, you don't see a blue man, you don't see an Asian man. You see a black man, you're talking at. It's black. Not only that, we done had 3 deaths. Jamal Clark, temporary closed. Philando Castile, the people didn't do nothing. Then y'all heart of George Floyd Square, where the heart of all black men was there. There was all black men there at George Floyd Square. And ever since then, you guys have been talking black peoples. Y'all, what is we doing here? And then for our black men, y'all not doing anything to help our black men. All y'all doing is trying to tear our black men down and take them away from their homes, take them away from their families. Then y'all did RICO and racketeering in the hard code of a city. That where y'all done killed the black man, take all the black men away from us so they can't stand with us in no type of way. You guys got to give us justice. We shut the streets down, and the streets is still ours. They're still ours. And if we have to shut the streets down, we will. We will shut the streets down again, because you know why? It's taxpayers' money. And y'all know if the streets shut down, it's going to shut down, and it will. It will. Y'all keep throwing us under the rug. We not rugs. It's 13 of y'all. Jesus had 24 disciples. When he got done, he had 12. So it's 13 of y'all up here. So now what y'all gonna do? Jesus had 24 when he started. And when I come, I speak about the word of God. And God gonna split the Red Sea, and let me see what y'all gonna do.
Next, we have Yolanda, number 21, Julia, number 22, John Thompson, number 23.
Hi.
Hi, are you replacing Yolanda?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
My name is Tashira Garraway, fiance of Justin Tigan and founder of Family Supporting Families Against Police Violence. I stand here today because I'm standing for a man that, I stand here on righteousness first and foremost, but I stand here for a man that was treated less than a human being in our community. The reason why Mr. Maturi's shooter, I refuse to say his name, was left out in the community because there is no value for a black life here in Minnesota. And it has been shown time and time again. The reason why the shooter was left in the community for 5 days is because he has white privilege. Because he was a white supremacist that spit out racial slurs over and over again. White supremacy and white privilege is live and well in Minnesota, and anybody that doesn't stand up and speak out against it is complicit, and the blood is on your hands. I hope that you think about your loved one and your family member when you think of Mr. Maturi and how someone attempted to kill him. A hate crime happened right here in Minnesota, just like George Floyd was a hate crime, just like the father of my son, Justin Tigan, was a hate crime right here in Minnesota, just like Amir Locke was a hate crime. Because they knew that it was a black building, black families that when they shot him and killed him. So we are fighting white supremacy and white privilege. And we need all of you to stand against that. So what are you going to do? Ask yourself when you leave here today, what am I going to do to stand against white supremacy and white privilege? And FYI, you don't have to be white to push the white supremacy agenda. You don't have to be white to push the white privilege agenda. Understand that. You can be black, you can look like me, and still push the white supremacy and the white privilege agenda. So what are you going to do as a human being to stand against that? Thank you.
Thank you, Tashira. And Tashira, if you can sign up with the clerk's, thank you, Tashira. If you can sign up with the clerk's office just so we have the record. I don't think you signed up. So, thank you. Tashira. Hi, welcome.
Hello. My name is Julia Johnson. I live in Ward 8. First, I want to say my heart goes out to David Maturi and his family. It is unsurprising, yet it is rage-inducing as ever to learn that the local police, MPD, refused to intervene and prevent violence or hold John Sawchuk accountable. What's important, I have known since a young age that the police around the country are a crucial part of a corrupt, racist, oppressive system. And I know this because in 1981, the Ku Klux Klan, they knocked on my grandma's door where she was raising her 7 children, including my mother. They said my family had to leave that night or they would be murdered. My grandma packed what she could and she fled. What's important to know about this story is that the head of the Klan was also the sheriff of that town. And so, you know, my family, they always let me know not to expect help from the police or other, you know, servants of the public good. Whether it's community violence or hate crime, to them, it was all part of the plan to continue to oppress us and to continue to leave us unsafe. So it was very unsurprising whenever I saw the reports and the outrage about the unabashed violence of Sawchuk going completely unchecked and with pitiful attempts from MPD to intervene, because Sawchuk is part of the plan. He is a vigilante doing the work of the MPD to keep us in line, to know our place. I know that this system is not here to protect us. It is here to oppress us. The lip service that Chief O'Hare gave is to gaslight us and to deflect from the fact that a proud white supremacist was the one who did this, and proud white supremacists are serving on the Minneapolis Police Department. I ask everyone here to root out the corruption, to find who those people are and to ensure that our voices are heard and they are not being drowned out by behind the closed door scenes whenever we have white supremacists in positions of power who are ensuring that our people are terrorized. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. And next up, we have number 23, John Thompson. Number 25, actually, the person just spoke.
Thank you,
then we
brother.
have number 26, Reed. Number 27, Eliza.
Historically, violence and discrimination against black men in Minneapolis and the slow response from the justice system reflect the long-standing racial inequities rooted in systemic racism here in Minneapolis, and as much in the United States. And sentences have led to numerous cases where black people have not only received justice after experiencing violence. Minneapolis, in particular, has a legacy of discriminatory practices such as redlining, segregation, and exclusion from economic opportunities, which led to marginalized black communities facing harsher treatment by law enforcement. And George Floyd in 2020 was one of the most visible examples, sparking what I call a racial uprising here in the state of Minnesota. Additionally, there have been historically under-reporting of and under-investigation of crimes against black people here in the state of Minnesota. Individuals further exacerbating community distrust in law enforcement. The issue stems from a couple of complex legal standards around hate crimes, and I'm just going to stop there because I want to ask, why isn't this being investigated as a hate crime? When does a white man get to shoot a black man like a nigger, treat him like a nigger, call him a nigger, and nobody's calling for this to be investigated as a hate crime? This is a hate crime. And I don't want to hear the media saying anything about his mental health, because when I think of Kobe Heisler, I think of mental health. When I think of the lady who said, "I rebuke you, Satan, in the name of Jesus," and was shot, I think of mental health. This man didn't have a mental health problem. He had a racism problem. And I thank you, Councilman Jenkins, for being firm on your stance with the police chief. I'm not asking for you to get rid of him. I'm demanding that you get rid of this police chief. You wouldn't have given Arredondo this much time or this much lineage. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for having public
John.
comment, and I appreciate y'all.
Thank you, John. We have number 26. It looks like the spelling here is an R. I think it's Ree. Colma. R-E-E. Number 26. Yeah. Number 26. Oh, is it L-E? Okay, it might be Lee. Lee Coleman. Okay, cool. We can go back to you, but otherwise we'll move on to number 27, Eliza. Number 28, Jay.
Grace and peace. How's everyone? How's everyone? Amen. We're alive, and I'm grateful to be here. What I come here to ask you and share with you is that compassion for the weak is the backbone of every society. What you do to the least, you do to me. I'm black, not comely. My hair is like wool. My feet are bronze like the sun. So they stretched me out, but still here we are again with the same thing. Money is not good for anything. You can't take it with you. You'll be sent back if you come to the throne with it. So the thing is, I saw a lot of raises in the documents. And that money could be spent on empathy classes for every officer, for every emergency worker. Don't take that money and put it back where. Because the thing is right now, just like you did 4 years ago, when the circle was first built on love and compassion, you said it wouldn't be here for 5 days, the city. But then it was here the next year, and then they tried to take it away with force. but not by the power of God. Because that's who we stand for, everyone. We stand for everyone who's ever fallen. And now is your chance. What are you going to do? Are you just going to share the money? Are you going to share the money amongst yourself? Are you going to go down with it? Or are you going to lift up the people? You want to re-envision something that you don't know the vision of in George Floyd Square. Because if you don't sit with us, you'll lose your seats. And the truth of the matter is, if you don't stand with us, again, you'll be left out in the cold. You lose your seat. But what are you going to do? That's my question.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jay. Well, next up, we have Jaylani, and then we have Chantel. Jaylani, I know I saw you here. Oh, there you are.
First of all, greeting of peace to everybody. Assalamu alaikum, and peace be upon you all. Council President Payne, Council Vice President Chaktai, council members. I want to start off by counting, and for the public, if they want to help me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 19 times Davis Matori's family called for help. Wow. They called 911 19 separate times. We want the system to work for everyone. We know it doesn't work for black people, but we want it to work for everyone. It is unacceptable after the murder of George Floyd that we are talking about a family who was nearly killed because of the inaction of the Minneapolis Police Department. What we're asking for is very clear. We want a transparent, independent investigation that looks at the entire system. How is it possible that a family calls 19 times and the 13th time, when that call comes into the 911 operator, there should be notes to say, this family called 13 times. The 14th time, there should be some note saying, this is the 14th time. Somebody's got to do something. Right. I want to know, what will it take for families in Minneapolis, particularly the black families, to get service from the Minneapolis Police Department in the same manner that they get in Uptown and other parts of the city. That's all we're asking for. And I want to make sure that in this investigation, it's not just the chief. I want to know every single staff member who is responsible for inaction.
Next up, we have Chantel Allen. And for members that have not signed up to testify, please sign up if you're wishing to speak today. School Board Director Chantel Allen.
I got my paper.
Oh, you're next.
My name is Chantel Allen. I'm with Black Lives Matter Twin Cities. Don't take up my time, y'all, because I got things to say. First of all, I'm here in solidarity with the city, because the city keeps calling. Now, not many of y'all were here in 2015. Maybe Councilmember Jenkins, were you here in 2015? I was here in 2015, and there was a nice crowd of community just like this who came and said, please, do something different. Please stop killing us. Please stop letting white people kill us. Please look into the system and change policing in a hurry. We came back in 2016, came back in 2017, 2018. Thurman Bovins got killed. Jamar Clark got killed. I mean, people kept getting killed. Racism kept happening in this city. And there was people that, the brother came up, he said, y'all gonna lose your jobs. I saw some of y'all was looking like, I'm politically sound, I got this. You know what? In 2016, I said that to the St. Paul City Council. I said that to the St. Paul School Board. And guess what? Not near one of them are still sitting in them seats. They looked at me like, oh, I'm so politically sound. But guess what? Anybody's seat can be taken. So if you're not there representing this community, expect that your seat will be gone. That's the reality of this whole work. Y'all have to listen now. Because I'm just talking politically to y'all, because y'all know I do politics and whatever, right? I'm talking politically to y'all. But these people, they talking real street shit. I'm trying to tell you from a real street shit perspective that in 2015, we didn't want to see 2020 happen. We didn't want when 2020 happened, it hurt my soul. Because I didn't want to see that happen. In 2018, I didn't want to see it happen. And we came back, and it still happened. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? How are you going to do something different now, though?
Thank you. That completes the list of registered speakers. Is there anyone who has not signed up yet that would like to address the committee? Welcome.
Hi everyone, my name is Bridget Stewart, a member of Ward 8. I wasn't going to speak because I felt like everyone in the community said what was needed to be said. However, there's one missing component. I just recently came back from an ACOL conference where there was people from all over the world. Everyone in the United States and 6 different countries were represented. Every single panel I went to at that conference talked about Minneapolis and George Floyd and what they have done to move forward in their police departments and their law enforcement agencies after what took place in what I call home, being a born and raised Minnesotan. And I sit here and I'm watching body language from different council members, and I'm looking at you guys and I'm looking at your faces and I'm trying to read the room, and what I'm seeing is a lack of concern. And what I'm seeing is a lack of discipline. What I'm seeing is a community that is being reflective of our city council. What I see is discord, and when I look out into community, I see that same discord. We're a mere reflection of each other. We have got to get on one accord. We have got to move forward together, because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing: public safety for each and every individual, whether you wear a blue uniform or a yellow jacket or a sweatshirt. Everybody wants to go home to their family members safely. You guys, we have got to stop putting politics at the core of everything we do. We have got to stop on 38th in Chicago trying to figure out, I said this years ago, which set do we want to be on today? Do we want to be on The Wire, or do we want to be on New Jack City? How about we just want to live in a community that is safe? Please, for the sake of your constituents who voted to put you in office, listen to them and give them what they deserve, which is safety.
I was talking to myself. Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, I will close this public comment period. I want to thank everyone who took their time of the day to come and speak with us. I'm going to open the floor to my colleagues that may wish to share a few words. So I'll look at the queue to see if anybody is hoping to speak. I'll first call on Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. I just want to thank everyone who came today. I know this was an incredibly traumatic and challenging conversation to have for many of our residents, especially in light of the conversation that we're going to have from staff about the city's vision for George Floyd Square, as we're talking about reopening a place.
Already open.
Right. and yet we still haven't dealt with the fact that we're still very much racist in this city. And I just want to also thank communities United Against Police Brutality and Minneapolis for a Better Police Contract for submitting a memo that we've also forwarded to the clerk's to be attached to LIMS, as well as to our city auditor to take into consideration as they're looking at the motion that we passed last week, requesting for an after-action review of the shooting of Mr. Davis Maturi. We are going to be following up with the city auditor to make sure that they give us an answer about their decision to take on an investigation independently and to take into consideration the concerns that was brought up by community members today. And we will absolutely keep you all updated on those points of inquiry that you pointed out. And I just want to let at least the public know that I know my office and a number of my colleagues are committed to continuing to work with community members to get a full understanding of how not just MPD, but the mayor's office, because I want to remind the public, and this keeps getting lost in the sauce somehow, is the mayor that oversees MPD. That is the boss. It is also the mayor's office that oversees the Office of Community Safety, or the Commissioner Barnett, the highest paid city employee here. And looking at how do we as a city take full accountability for whatever failure took place in this case, and to also ensure that this does not happen for not only other residents, but in particularly our Black residents that continues to receive substandard service at the hands of not only the police department, but many of our departments at the city. So I just want to thank you all for coming out in the middle of the day, a work day, for participating in this public comment period.
Thank you. Do any of my colleagues have any other comments that they'd like to share today? Council President Payne.
Thank you, Chair Chavez, and thank you to everyone who came out today. I know that we wanted to have this discussion sooner, and I actually want to apologize that this is an institution that doesn't make it easy to engage with. It puts up rules and procedures to try to block progress sometimes. At least it feels that way to me. And we oftentimes get caught up in that, right, in our roles. And we hold these seats with certain responsibilities. And it is my commitment to use this role to uplift this community as much as I can within my authority. And I think that there's a lot of commitment from my colleagues to do that as well. And I'm just very grateful for all of you holding us accountable to those commitments.
All right, there isn't anybody else on queue, so I'll direct the clerk to receive and file those comments. Item number 2 is part of our settlement agreement and consent decree oversight subcommittee, so I will turn the meeting over to President Payne as chair of that committee.
Thank you, Councilmember Chavez. This item is a legislative directive related to updates on the court enforceable legal settlement with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, including the role of the independent evaluator. If there are any questions, Councilmember Wansley is available to answer them. I'll call on Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Council President Payne. Just a little bit of context on this. So, colleagues, I authored this legislative directive in response to many questions that I have heard from both the public and some of my colleagues about the city's progress on implementing the settlement agreement and how the city's work relates to the work of the independent evaluator, specifically ALIFA, and how residents can provide input if they believe they have seen conduct by MPD that violates their current policies or the terms and conditions that's included in the settlement agreement. So this legislative directive asks the city attorney's office to present in January of 2025 to basically give a level setting presentation for council and the public on these lines of questions and inquiries, and to also provide ongoing updates regarding implementation progress surrounding the settlement agreement, and then also also to basically give further updates around just transparency around the process. And I just want to thank the City Attorney's Office for working with my office on this legislative directive. And I do look forward to finally receiving more regular updates on this starting in 2025. I think that's going to be imperative, especially in light of just hearing the public testimony we heard following the shooting of Davis Maturi, where people want to hear how are we moving accountability around our police department. So I just want to offer some context around this legislative directive.
Thank you for that context. And I also want to express gratitude for bringing this forward. I'd worked with the city attorney's office so that those of us on council could have an opportunity to have some small group briefings with Alifa to get at some of these questions. And I'm glad that you're formalizing this in a legislative directive so that the public can get that same level of information and access. And seeing no one else in queue, all those in favor, I'll move to approval of this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carries, and I will now return the chair back to Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Mr. President. We will now move on to our discussion items. The first item is an update on community engagement efforts at George Floyd Square and the GFS Visioning and Priorities Report. I'll invite city staff to come present that report. Welcome, COO.
Good afternoon, Chair. I just need to make sure our presentation is up, which I don't have. So I will wait for someone to come help.
If our clerk's team can help us out with the situation.
I think we need
staff?
somebody else in the room.
Okay.
I don't know where it is.
Do you guys have it?
No, I think we submitted it. You have to bring it.
We'll put it on.
Yeah. Okay. I certainly can. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I'm Margaret Anderson Kelleher. I serve as the COO of the City of Minneapolis. And today with me, I have quite a large team who's going to be presenting to you. I do want to start with a few words of introduction about the presentation that you're going to be seeing. First of all, this will be a comprehensive presentation of the engagement at George Floyd Square over the last number of years. And the important part, I want to say thank you to everyone who has participated in these sessions. There have been thousands of people, especially in the last year and over the previous years. And so the work that you're going to see today that re-envisions George Floyd Square really builds upon the work since George Floyd's murder, since the unrest, and it helps us define the future space of George Floyd Square. It focuses on how people will move around the square, whether they're walking, biking, driving, taking transit, and being able to move safely through the square. It also has a focus on how people can gather together in public gatherings, including at the People's Way property, and preserving future right-of-way for memorials. Part of the reason we are here is that this street needs street reconstruction. It has been something that we have worked on before 2020, we're continuing to work on now, but we paused that work to be able to have wholesome and fulsome community engagement. Okay, I'm going to just give it a second here. Do you know why it's not in? Okay. All right. You are going to hear from the core team today, minus one person, which I'll speak to in a second, who are staff experts on this particular both set of plans as well as the engagement process. They have been working together for years on this project. listening to community, often in a weekly series, and developing recommendations that can guide the future investment. I want to say that I personally am very grateful to Alexander Cato, but Mr. Cato's not with us today. He had an invitation to present to an international conference on placemaking, and we thought it was important that he be able to take that opportunity. So Alexander is not here, but we have a lot of expertise coming in on his behalf. This is our agenda. We'll go through the engagement process, the People's Way, memorials, streets, the right-of-way, and the next steps. So one of the things that we have been asked about and asked to present on is what has been happening both from an engagement standpoint and an investment standpoint. But I want to take us back that the reason we are here talking about George Floyd Square is that on May 25th, 2020, George Floyd, Perry Floyd, was murdered by Minneapolis police officers on this street. His murder set off worldwide protests, raising up both black and people of color who had been murdered by the police. These protests began right at George Floyd Square, and the square was then closed to vehicles for a period of time. The area became a gathering space for memorials, events, community healing, as well as reflection. In June of 2021, the street was reopened, and in May of 2022, by action of the City Council with the mayor, the square was formally named for George Perry Floyd as George Perry Floyd Square, with his family present. Throughout this work, our engagement in this year and the previous years, community members have been asking what investments have been made here already. There are important questions beyond the street that people have asked. So on the top, I'm going to focus on a couple of particular investments. You actually have a number of, I think, 5 pages of investments that have been made in the area in the LIMS file. But to highlight a couple. First of all, the $1.23 million from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that went towards the Belfray Apartments at 3901 Chicago with 41 affordable rental units. The $1.5 million for forgivable loans to businesses at the 38th and Chicago area. The $850,000 down payment assistance home improvement financing programs for communities surrounding the square. $228,000 to support the artist plan for memorials during the construction. $200,000 towards the purchase of the People's Way on top of the gift acceptance that you all did a number of months ago to accept from the previous owner the People's Way. $330,000 in creative response funding and creative city-making projects that have been in the area. $100,000 for 38th Street Cultural District with annual funds budgeted for this cultural district. It's important to also recognize there was an existing adopted plan for the area called 38th Street Thrive. Councilmember Jenkins is very familiar with the work, as are you, Councilmember Chavez. In 2021, the council adopted the 38th Street Thrive plan, a community development plan that hits on multiple areas of development and investment that included stakeholders in collaboration with the city. Since its adoption, there's been progress, significant progress in the areas on this slide that you are seeing here today. I especially want to point out the things that we have heard over and over again in our engagement that directly relate back to 38th Street Thrive. Reestablishing transit on Chicago Avenue. You're going to hear more about this, but 1 in 4 households, so this is a lot of people, have no access to a car along this route. Creating a bike-friendly corridor, repairing and widening the sidewalks out for safety for walking and rolling, and adding landscaping, green space, as well as public art. There are elements that have been incorporated into the street concept that you're going to see today that's going to be presented a little later in the presentation. Those things are incorporated in. And you can also see a number of the other items that have both been worked on since 38th Street Thrive was adopted. I'm going to next turn it over to Anthony Taylor from the Cultural Wellness Center. Mr. Taylor helped lead our community engagement, and he will speak to the community engagement portions.
Welcome, Anthony.
You have to hit with the arrow, so in fact, yeah.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Anthony Taylor with the Cultural Wellness Center, and I'm here to speak specifically about the engagement overview for the visioning related to George Floyd Square. Again, I'll talk about our engagement approach and really particular outcomes. One of the elements of this that I also like to highlight in terms of why are we here in this area and the significance is that 38th Street itself, 30th and 4th specifically, again, is a legacy African-American district dating back to the beginning of redlining in the Twin Cities and plays, and I think that that beginning also plays a significant level of importance in terms of why we are here and the events that have happened since then. Our engagement approach was really built around not receiving recommendations for the monuments that would someday be at George Floyd Square, but was really specifically looking at coming up with a very particular set of community values that would guide the work that would happen for years related to the square, that is a set of foundational values. I was also looking specifically at creating an RFP for the People's Way that would then itself help choose a community-oriented developer that would then begin work with community to make determination of what the future programming is in the development there, what community and processes and programming looks like there, and that is going to be determined in the next process. Also around memorials, really defining the goals and prioritizing where are the current monuments, what is there. And one of the questions we asked community was the question of what should be memorialized, and took responses from there. And the last thing really was specifically related to the design and concept and layout for the street as we prepare for what the future of George Floyd Square is like. That we began this process with a pilgrimage, taking our team members from the city with community members and actually taking a pilgrimage to George Floyd Square as if we had not been there, kind of grounding ourselves in a shared context. And most importantly, one of the things that I point to in terms of what should be memorialized, that there is a community orientation that is actively leading people that come to the square, that come to the city, and one of the great outcomes of this has really been this community ownership and really leading and guiding of creating context for people who come to the square. We began with a dinner and dialogue. We had over 200 community members show up, and then began a series of visioning workshops. And each visioning workshop had a very particular goal related to the priorities, the People's Way, as well as the future monuments and places. So every one of these meetings built on that. We also, in between these larger visiting sessions, organized meetings that we called office hours, where community members in smaller numbers were actually able to meet with city staff, meet with Cultural Wellness Center staff, meet with the team from Formula Architects, and really we had more detailed and more specific conversations around future disposition, current challenges, and what was important. And much of the work that came out of that were really identifying particular needs around human capital investment related to the community members who live in and around George Floyd Square. We finished with a final dinner dialogue that also, we had over 200 participants there, where we made a formal presentation of recommendations related to the final disposition RFP, a final recommendation related to the street itself, and then again dug into the values and priorities related to future placement of monuments for George Floyd Square. And here are some examples, and I think you all have seen many of these examples of what people said. We, in this experience, received many diverse opinions of the experience people were having, a future disposition of the square. And again, the process for us was really listening and organizing these into a set of priorities and values that would then be used for continued work at George Floyd Square. The key community values that came out, one was repair. And I think you all have heard this many times. This idea of repairing the collective harms that have done, which is one of the reasons why I'm always looking at the long trajectory of life in South Minneapolis, that honoring George Floyd Square as an active memorial site. And lastly, really centering the needs of community in terms of what the future at George Floyd Square will come like. And these values really created in the Community Acts and really, again, will guide future development. And these will be the places that we continue to return to as development happens in the square itself. Inside of the idea of our community priorities, one was this idea of repair, and these are going to be guiding future designs. One, of course, creating spaces for reflection, truth-telling, and healing, strengthening economic health, remedy the environmental injustices, and so again, a very important piece of this is really the environmental impact and community. It was very clear that this is critical for them. And then also increasing access and reducing barriers related to transportation. Over the course of this development, we hope to again honor and include George Floyd's family, in future development of George Floyd Square, also identifying growing and emerging community organizations that are beginning to lead this work and design the development, and then, of course, the idea of preserving the space for existing future art, current art, and future art and memorials. And the last thing we're looking at doing is centering and prioritizing the daily experiences of the community that currently live in near around George Floyd Square, and in doing this, maintaining clear and reliable access to George Floyd Square, the businesses, and the location as a destination for community members who live there now. I'm going to introduce our team from Minneapolis. Who's it speaking? Brother Prince will be speaking this afternoon.
Welcome, Director Prince.
Good morning, or good afternoon, council members. Before diving into this, I do want to take a pause when we're talking about racial healing, because we just heard about an hour and a half worth of testimony from other people, and I don't know about you all, but my body is feeling something right now, and it's probably very similar throughout this space. So just want to create a space where we can all take a deep breath in, because it's like we go from one thing to another. So if you can join with me in just taking some deep breaths, take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. People in the crowd too, can y'all do this with me? Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And that is part of racial healing. Many believe that racial healing can offer promises as a prevention tool by directly addressing the ills of racism at both interpersonal and broader institutional and structural levels. Racial healing is recognizing and unlearning to overcome one's internalized messages about one's own ethno-racial identity and those of others. Racial healing is a process that is both introspective and interpersonal. It is also a process of recognizing, addressing, and reconciling individual and collective racism, its historical roots, and its current impacts on society. It begins with exploring our internalized racism and cycles of racial socialization in ways that brings about an integrated awareness of our own racialized identities as a means of challenging privilege and fostering collective healing and systemic reform. For Black folks, American Indian folks, Asian communities, and Latino individuals, this may involve rejecting terms around white supremacy, white superiority, celebrating cultural heritage, traditions, and identities, and fostering hope and strength through solidarity with other racialized identities. Among white individuals, this process can mean unlearning and challenging their own privilege that stems from white supremacy towards interrupting and disrupting cycles of interpersonal institutional racism. This definition before you wasn't finalized and shared until February 2024, at the time where all directors and their direct reports were attending Metamorphosis, a 6-month anti-racist leadership program. With this definition of racial healing, we talk about 3 areas of racial healing being the self, social, and system. So thinking about racial healing in these 3 different aspects. And along the social, this is, I'm going to talk a little bit about the office hours group that Anthony Taylor had brought up. Along the social pieces, community connections, collective validation, empathy, and support. And it is through the social piece. Over the summer, myself and some members from my team from REIB, Race, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Department, have been over at George Floyd Square every Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m., meeting with members of the community, building relationships, building connections. The office hours group was a group of individuals, very diverse individuals, small, who attended and showed up at Agape every Wednesday because they wanted to learn more and they were interested in what was happening at the intersection of 38th and Chicago. And from that, they came up with the vision statement, a mission statement, who are we and where we are headed. The vision statement created by the group in consensus, the office hours group envisions a united, thriving community that transcends systemic racism, embraces collaboration, and prioritizes restoration and reconciliation. They aim to transform the neighborhood from division and pain to unity, pride, and healing, fostering an environment where everyone can thrive. The mission statement created by this group is our mission is to actively dismantle systemic racism within our community, promote inclusive collaboration, and drive the transformation from survival to thriving. We are committed to restoring our neighborhood through truth-telling and restoration by changing the narrative from despair to hope and pain to gain. We strive to unite fragmented parts into a collective, cohesive whole, ensuring that political leaders meet our community's demands for racial equity and racial justice. The Office Hours Group is a collective committed to transforming divided neighborhoods into united, thriving communities by addressing systemic racism and fostering collaboration and restoration. Where we are headed, this is what the group came up with in a matter of a few short weeks. From subgroups to a collective and transitioning from isolated efforts to a united front. From surviving to thriving and moving beyond mere survival to a state of flourishing. From divisiveness to collaboration, replacing division with a spirit of cooperation, and torture to restoration, healing from the past trauma, and prioritizing restorative practices. That is what the social community of Brown Racial Healing came up with. And there is a typo on this one, on this slide, I must admit. It should not be social, it should be self. But these are some of areas around healing for self, semantic awareness, grounding techniques, physical movement, therapeutic support when we're triggered within our own selves, some things that we can do. But also want to recognize that from being over in the square a lot, I didn't necessarily hear this a lot coming directly from community about what it is that they want from the city. As a matter of fact, just this past weekend, there was a Black Healing for Us, not for us, by us event that community came together to. And from being over in the square with Ray, with the gardener, with the gatekeeper, with other folks, they really want us to focus around this area of racial healing is a systemic structural reform and transformational change, addressing the root causes, the sustainable change, directing our resources to the community and to where it needs to be. And this final slide that you see before you is racial healing values and priorities. So at 2 of the visioning sessions, my team was able to be there to facilitate just some small conversation circles at the community visioning sessions. And one of my team members, Charisma Smith, who is our program manager in REIB, read through a lot of the data report and pulled together themes that she saw within those reports around what it is that community said that they wanted from what was in those reports. Truth-telling and accountability, which is connected to the structural reform and addressing the root causes. So one of the key pieces is addressing the legacies of Black resistance and racial trauma through activism, art, and storytelling. There's a lot of artists in the neighborhood who were at the square, and a lot of art that I recognized that I didn't even know was art that's recognized by community members. Racial healing through art and activism connected to the social piece. Economic and social healing, I think, was a huge piece around thriving Black businesses and racial healing seen through social and economic improvements within the George Floyd Square. So these were some of the discussions that REIB led and going through the reports around how we connected racial healing into this. And with that, I turn it over.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members and Chair Chavez. My name is Rebecca Perel. I work in community planning as a project supervisor. I'm here to talk a little bit today as a part of the large staff team working at George Floyd Square, specifically on the People's Way property. We'll talk about what we heard from community as I've been a part of the engagement work that Mr. Taylor just spoke to a little earlier. And then I'll talk about the RFQ that we have recently issued and a little bit about the timing for that and next steps around that, and also the values and actions. So today in the LIMS attachment, you'll see the vision report. And so in that, you will find the values that Anthony went over, Mr. Taylor went over, as well as the actions. And I'll be presenting here on the actions that CPED will be taking as it relates to the People's Way property. So what we heard during the sessions, and this goes back to from the very beginning in 2020 when the city had engaged consultants to work with staff on engagement at the intersection. And we really have focused the last 6 months on getting more information from community about what they'd like to see at the People's Way. And so when it comes to property uses, there's a wide variety of things that people might be interested in seeing, but I think the primary piece that pulls them all together is that it's something that serves community and doesn't take away from community. And so there are lots of various options that could become to the site. And it could be more than just one of these. But some of the things that members of the community have mentioned are a memorial or racial justice healing center, space for reflection and contemplation, a museum or art gallery, a community center, or a center for various social services for community members. And so like I mentioned, this could be multiple of these uses on the site or just a single use on the site. There are also certain things that are really of priority importance for the community, no matter what is on the site inside of a building. And those outdoor things are covered outdoor gathering space. And this continues to be important because we have community members on site daily, and it's important for them to have that outdoor gathering space that's also covered if there's rain or snow.
You can come to our community and listen to us. We want police reform.
If we can please,
we don't want a damn building.
If we can please.
This is not about your building or your street.
Thanks, Bobby.
This is about my life, my
Thanks,
freedom,
Bobby.
and my people and my community, and your police brutality.
Have a good day, Bobby. We will.
President, council member, and son.
Thank you.
We don't want your street. We don't want your building. We want help. We want to have safety in our community.
And we're not disagreeing with that. So please proceed.
So yes, there are certain things that the community does want to continue doing there and that the city is very interested in continuing are gardens on site and covered outdoor gathering space, the complete full ADA accessibility for all members of the community, indoor space to be able to continue to provide some of the community resources that are available on site today, and public restrooms indoors so that there are also facilities for all community members to use when they're visiting the intersection. Another thing we really heard from folks is that The owner should primarily be a not-for-profit organization and not somebody that's coming in to make money off the community. So when I get to the next piece about the RFQ that we issued, one of the requirements is that the lead applicant responding to the RFQ be a nonprofit organization with a mission to assist community in the area. The city purchased the People's Way site in June of 2023, and we have been working with the Office of Public Service and others here from the city of Minneapolis during our community engagement, and we were able to release an RFQ in September, just a month and a half ago. And there, in that RFQ, it lists the community priorities for indoor and outdoor space, as you just saw on the previous slide, as well as the eligible applicants being nonprofit owners. When the proposals are due next week on November 22nd, they will be reviewed internally first by city staff, as noted in the chart there, in December. And then they will also go to the community. And depending on the number of applicants, city staff will decide what that community engagement process will look like in January, February, March, so that community members can also see and hear from the applicants that are interested in buying the site. The goal is then to be able to be back in front of this body with a recommendation to the City Council and Mayor to award a period of exclusive development rights for the site in later next spring in 2025. The applicants are being asked to provide information through the RFQ on three primary things: their experience doing projects in the past, their financial qualifications for being able to complete a project, and their stewardship intentions. And their stewardship intentions are based on the next slide in terms of how they plan to uphold the values as determined by the community. So those three values are what Mr. Taylor went through. Those are repairing the collective harms, honoring George Floyd Square as a sacred and active memorial space, and centering the needs of community. So that is a critical piece of reviewing the applications that are received. The actions that you'll find in the vision report as it relates specifically to the People's Way are listed here, and these relate to how the city and how the city CPED will move forward with a sale process over years. So the first step is the exclusive development rights that would be acted upon by the City Council and Mayor, and then we would be able to move forward with negotiating a land sale for a future time. And we're in that negotiation process. As landowner, the City of Minneapolis has the ability to require future owners to continue to engage community and to make sure that the spaces that the community is interested in seeing are presented and built on site. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Welcome, Mary.
Mr. Chair, council members, I am Mary Altman. I am the Public Arts Supervisor for the Department of Arts and Cultural Affairs. I'm going to first talk about what we've heard from the community. I wish we had time to spend, hours to spend with you to tell you what we've heard from the community, because we heard a lot, and people were very impassioned, and they gave their hearts and time to us, and we're all very grateful. I know that for some of them, participating in our process could be triggering, and also many of them have been engaging for 4 years on this topic, and people were understandably really tired. But this is a representative group of their comments, and as you can see, they don't necessarily all agree with one another, which is what community is about. So the engagement for the memorials focused on a couple of things. One was on identifying the role of the city in a future memorial, and the other was to look at locations, particularly as they relate to the right-of-way. So in terms of the roles, I just want to start out by talking about the roles of other folks and then go into the city role. But I want to start by recognizing Rise and Remember and Janelle Austin, who's here today, and their important work in conserving the offerings and the memorials and removing them when they could no longer be at the square, as well as sharing them here locally and in other places. As you know, their work is highly regarded and especially regarded nationally in the conservation field. I also want to thank Angela Harrelson, the aunt of George Floyd, who met with us and was generous and candid about her thoughts and concerns. I particularly want to recognize the artists and creators of the memorials at the square. They have raised up the city through their work, expressing pain, anger, and hope that people have experienced through the process of the murder of George Floyd and other black and brown bodies. These artists have shown tremendous courage over the last 4 years as they've addressed the weight and the impact of their works on the community and beyond, and the weight of thinking about the future of these works. These artists likely own their works at the square, and they need to determine the future of the works. Some will have the opportunity to reintegrate their works into the new right-of-way, and some may decide to remove their works if they don't want them reintegrated. The city will be hiring conservators to meet with the artists in the community and to plan for the next phase of the work in the right-of-way to do conservation as needed. We are working to engage conservators with experience with RISE and Remember and with the artists and the caretakers. I also want to recognize the caretakers of George Floyd Square and the work that they have done over the past 4 years, and we hope to continue to work with them as we work on the planning process and participate in the next phase of conservation. We talked to the community about the city's role. We also talked to the city attorney's office because we wanted to understand the city's role in allowing a future memorial at the square. So the city's role is, of course, to align with the values that were defined by the community members through the engagement, to honor the work of the artists, the makers, and the stewards, to work with the conservators and artists on reintegrating works, to plan and move memorials for construction, to review and approve and permit all memorials, both new works and reintegrated works, and to ensure that all the memorials comply with particularly codes. So in terms of planning and the next phase, we're working on developing a plan that addresses both the existing memorials, the memorials that will be reintegrated, and any future memorials that will happen at the square. So we'll be creating a conservation plan for this work. One of the things we really heard from the community was that it was very important to maintain an active memorial at the square during construction. And so this isn't going to be a situation where we're going to take everything and put it in storage during construction. We're going to maintain an active memorial. We might have to move things around during construction, redefine the space here. But creating the phasing plan for construction is going to be really important and involving the artists in that process. We're going to plan for the integration of the memorials into the new design, which Nathan is going to present in a moment. We'll be doing community engagement, and it's important for us to be transparent about our process. And then we, of course, recognize the need for the city to create events to prepare the community for the change and the impact of the reconstruction of the right-of-way and the trauma that it might cause to the people who live particularly in the neighborhood and who've been invested at the square. And so we will need to plan for events that happen before construction, during construction, and possibly even after construction. This is the work we've done so far on locations. This is just related to or particularly related to the right-of-way. So, and this is like, I think of this as like the 10,000-foot view. This is not the detailed plan of how memorials will be integrated. This is just some of the broad brushstrokes. So the area in A, where George Floyd was murdered, we are preserving that area for a future memorial to be developed by George Floyd's family. At the intersection of 38th and Chicago, and at the areas entering into George Floyd Square, we've preserved spaces for the fifth sculpture, the 5 fifth sculptures, or other gateway sculptures. At the People's Way, Rebecca worked hard to put together an RFQ that incorporated the possibility to have memorials located at the People's Way in the future, and also that has some flexibility for the city and others to determine what will happen to the memorials that are there currently. The Say Their Names Cemetery, there are currently no changes planned there. Formula met with artist Mari Mansfield to look at the current footprint of Mourning Passage, the names in the street. And I just want to recognize Mari Mansfield for this work. We heard a lot from the people in the community, how important that work was to their own daily rituals, but also how important that annual ritual of repainting the names is every spring in the square. And Formula met with Mari and talked to her about the footprint, and this drawing shows how Mourning Passage could be repainted in the new space. Also, just briefly, gardens can be reintegrated into both the right-of-way and the People's Way. There's a lot more green space in the new right-of-way design. And we'll work on integrating other particular works during the next phase of the right-of-way design. Now I'm turning it over to my colleague, Nathan Kostner.
Welcome, Nathan.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Nathan Koster, Supervisor Transportation Planner with Public Works Transportation Planning and Programming Division. Today I'll be here to talk about what we heard, a little bit of the background since this work has been going on for multiple years, as well as looking at what our design framework is, highlighting the years of engagement that we started from in 2024, and then looking at some of the concept development, how we evaluated that, and how that tied into the overarching values and priorities. Similar to Mary and previous presenters, this highlights a number of feedback that we've gotten. This isn't supposed to represent any one particular position. It just highlights there's a lot of thoughts, opinions, and feedback. And while our work in Public Works has a lot of planning, engineering, technical, and legal work, a lot of what I've learned specifically about this project since I've been involved and since 2021 is just listening. And spending so much more time listening about what the people have to say, what they're feeling, and how they're either coming into the meetings or the space. The city had identified a handful of projects in 2019 as we were developing the capital improvement program, a handful of them on Chicago and 38th. And as that plan, as the capital improvement program advanced, obviously we had COVID and then we had the murder of George Floyd. The use of the square rapidly changed of how it was being used. So as we advanced the capital improvement program, we looked to rescope the project to be more specific to 38th and Chicago for the 2 blocks in each direction on 38th, as well as 1 block in each direction on Chicago Ave. This really provided an opportunity to address a lot of the aging infrastructure and utilities, both the stuff you see at the surface as well as the things you see beneath the surface. This intersection is the literal and figurative intersection of protests, gathering, memorial, healing, pain, culture, and justice. We initially started that in community engagement in December of 2021, just to start listening from the community of what and how that space was being used and how we'd want to move forward. We covered a broad range of topics as we engaged with the community for those handful of years. There's many topics that we hosted in learning table sessions, such as public safety, the history of the community, healing, how transit operated, designs, and even having the authors of the 24 Demands for Justice come and talk to the community and staff. So what did we learn and what did we hear after engaging for 2 years? Is to slow down and listen to the community, and especially develop a more cohesive vision, which we're here presenting today, which is inclusive of memorials and the People's Way, and that's really centering the people. So this is some of the work that we presented about a year ago in October of 2023 when we came to the Committee of the Whole before we launched this work here in 2024. And this summarizes a lot of the themes that we started from in 2024, and really highlighting that even though we were engaging for multiple years, all those voices and opinions were being brought forward. No one's voice was being discarded, and those years of engagement were meaningful, and that we did bring all those forward. So we started this work in 2024. All the engagement activities where we're having people either draw the streets, showing their hopes and ambitions and what their priorities were, we brought all those forward. And what we started from and what we highlighted at the end of 2023 was people wanted 3 ideas that they generally wanted to see. A closed access, where the street would be fully closed. The street would be partially open, whether it was just for transit, pedestrians, or fully open. And that was our starting point of how we were going to look at this work and bring it together with both People's Way and Arts and Memorials this year. And we really think of this as like the foundation. And some of the principles that we just want to highlight is it's a part of a cohesive vision. Acknowledge that this is a sacred place and no vehicle or transit vehicle will be constructed or pass over the space where George Floyd was murdered. The streets will be inclusive for all people and will be maintaining access for businesses and residents. We did provide a full summary of the work that had occurred over the past few years that I have provided a link for as well. So as we started looking at the square with those ideas that the community brought forward for the city and Public Works to look at, I want to highlight that there is a lot of focus on the 3700 block, which is 37th to 38th on Chicago. But we're really looking at this as a cohesive set of streets, and each individual block is much different than the others. Some could be residential, some may be more commercial. The specific arts and memorials is so much different as a block on a block-to-block basis. I do want to clearly acknowledge that the limits of the project on 38th go from Park to 10th, but the community defined George Floyd Square is fist to fist to fist to fist, so that is a little bit different. We did expand a block in each direction, so whatever the design could be, it could have a chance to transition to whatever that design was. As we started this work, we're really rooted in a lot of our plans and policies. I know this body's very familiar of the Transportation Action Plan, Racial Equity Framework for Transportation, Vision Zero Action Plan, Climate Action Plan, and once again, the 38th Thrive Plan that was under development before we started this work and through the beginning of this work. Other things as far as policies we're looking at, Complete Streets Checklist, and then also layering on some of the must-haves that are the legal requirements, the ADA requirements to have an accessible space, looking at our stormwater requirements that we have through our city's MS4 permit and our Chapter 54 ordinance, which requires we treat and manage stormwater that falls within the right-of-way, applying or adhering to the fire code, as well as looking at the newly refined pedestrian mall state statute that city staff and myself worked with our Minneapolis delegation at the state capitol this last year. So the 3 concepts you're going to see are just general uses and modes and allocation of space and how they're going to function. And what I really want everyone to see this as is really as a canvas and a starting point that would serve for continued and ongoing engagement for how this space would be. I think Mary had stated it eloquently as she presented with Arts and Memorials. This is something that's going to require continued engagement as we go from planning to engineering and construction. Typically, we do a lot of engineering work and get ready for construction, but this would have to be a very thoughtful approach of how we'd continue to work with the community on individual aspects of the design to meet the goals and intention of how the space would function. And one last point I'd like to highlight is I know there's questions of why is street work needed. It's really important that the street is set up for all the future needs of the area, and some of that is the things you see at the surface for how it could function better, but a lot of it is getting the utilities and a lot of the really old streets updated, so as future memorials or arts or redevelopment of People's Square, that stuff beneath the surface that you don't see doesn't impact, impede, or disrupt future development. So as I said, the previous work identified 3 concepts the community wanted to see. Specifically, you're seeing how we took that engineering judgment, plans, policies to draw up 3 concepts that we shared with the community in July. The first one we're calling a pedestrian plaza. The next one is the transit mall, and the other one is the flexible open. And to be clear, when we were looking at the pedestrian plaza, the starting point, based upon what we heard from the community, is trying to close all legs in all directions to be fully closed. However, as we started looking at the individual aspects of the project, as far as where the access points are, how we'd be able to manage emergency vehicles and turnarounds, it did really transition into being more of a cul-de-sac that we're calling the pedestrian plaza. So all the businesses could have access, as well as making sure the fire department could get their vehicles in and out to serve the adjacent properties. This is a really key area and key corridor. We have a very busy fire station number 17 just down the street to the west on 38th Street. So all these aspects really played into how we were looking at it. We did look at doing more full closures on 38th, but because of how narrow the street is, it was really hard to just get cul-de-sacs in that space without actually compromising sidewalks that would be below minimums that would not meet our ADA requirements. So a lot of the closures were concentrated on that north block of Chicago. The second concept that I highlight is the transit mall. This would be focused on prioritizing transit as well as local access for businesses and residents. This would discourage through traffic and really focus on those needs in minimizing parking to really reinforce that. However, as we engaged with the community, there was a lot of concerns about how you would enforce that. And one of the last things that the community wanted to see was an additional enforcement and complications in that area that would result on designs that would require that. And then the last option is what we're calling the flexible open, that does maintain full access, but would have design elements incorporated that I'll share later that would allow it to really morph through time to be closed for when there's major events, gatherings, and festivals. So a couple of the challenges that we heard specific to the pedestrian plaza as we did community engagement in our technical work. The first one, as I mentioned, was ensuring access for residents and businesses. This area is a little bit atypical with the amount of access points for intersections, alleys, driveways, businesses. There's quite a bit more than we would typically have. We made it quite challenging as far as finding reasonable and suitable alternatives to get businesses, whether it's businesses or houses, to have access to driveways or their place of business. The second one was neighborhood traffic safety. There was definitely a lot of concerns as we were doing engagement about closing the street and rerouting traffic to the neighborhood. Neighborhood traffic calming, as I'm sure this body knows, is one of the biggest requests we get in the city, and this would put additional pressures on the side streets. A typical neighborhood street is about 32 feet. The streets that are adjacent to this area along Columbus, Elliott, and 10th are even narrower. They're 27 to 30 feet, and they do experience a high amount of parking on them, which makes them even more challenging to navigate, even in the best of conditions. And when you think about winter conditions, that further stresses the side streets, in addition to having emergency vehicle access through the area. The other two challenges I would like to highlight is local traffic circulation. Nearby streets, Park and Portland, serve as one-way streets. 35th, 36th operates as a one-way street. And then with Phelps Park and Say Their Name Cemetery, the stormwater pond, are also dead end. And then there is a full median barrier at Chicago and 40th. So there's really a lot of restrictions already in the area. And when we were talking to the fire department and others, there's not many alternative routes without going along a lot of these side streets. So there's limited options to get through the area, and that was definitely something we looked really closely at of how we'd be pushing and pulling in this already constrained area. And one other thing I want to highlight, because I know that's come through at the Climate and Infrastructure Committee as well as doing ongoing planning and engagement with the community, is there's further plans and visions that the neighborhood's very excited in for a neighborhood greenway along 10th, which is they branded as the Southside Greenway, that would also look for additional traffic calming. So there's a lot of pushes and pulls on every street and how we'd piece this together. The last one I highlight is transit access. With the rerouting of the on D line and Route 5 along Chicago Ave, The stations have been rerouted to both Park and Portland on 38th. The access has been significantly reduced for transit service. Each bus adds an additional 5 to 10 minutes of runtime in each direction, as well as it takes residents an additional 5 to 10 minutes to get to the bus. So when we think about the users of that route, which Margaret highlighted, are 1 in 4 people do not have access to a vehicle, as well as the need for a lot of transit-dependent riders in the area. That's adding anywhere on a one-way trip of 10 to 20 minutes in each direction for people who are transit reliant in that neighborhood, which there is quite a bit in the neighborhood that we have heard one specifically. And when you think about that on a daily basis, 20 to 40 minutes times every day of the year, every week of the year, it really starts adding up. And that's something that really came out in engagement, is a lot of people had moved to this area, and thinking as the winter's coming up, people reflected on that results in them making different decisions of deciding to drive or not being able to take the bus or having to walk a lot further in the winter or dark to get to those stations. And that was something that was really evident from the community that they valued a lot. So how do we pull together this evaluation? This matrix shows a very simplified version of how each of the 3 values that permeated the whole vision document had individual priorities, and each of those priorities was evaluated for the 3 concepts that led us to support a recommendation. And each of those is evaluated based upon meets, partially meets, and does not meet. A more detailed version of this is in the attachment for LIMS, or in the LIMS attachment, that summarizes, or that's in the final visioning report. So I'll just dive into the street design priorities quickly. So the first 2 priorities that fall under the value of repairing the collective harms experienced by the community due to historical impacts of racism and murders of George Floyd. The first one is addressing environmental disparities. As Anthony eloquently highlighted, this is a community that was impacted by redlining. So for those who are familiar going down the street, there's really not many trees. There's not much greening at all. This community really lacks those things. They are seeing through heat island impacts and what that has for community health. What we would be proposing on this project is we'd be adding more than half an acre, in round number 6/10 of an acre, of boulevards that would treat stormwater runoff that would be discharged in Lake Hiawatha, which is also one of a big priority for the community, because that's something we've consistently heard is water quality at Lake Hiawatha, as well as adding trees to help offset those heat island impacts in the neighborhood. The second one that falls under that value is improving access and reducing barriers to high quality transportation. The recommendation would restore transit service for residents on the Route 5 and the D line along Chicago Ave, as well as maintaining the Route 23 on 38th Street. In addition, it would be providing all ages and all abilities bikeways along both 38th and Chicago. The second value, honoring George Floyd Square, is an active memorial space. This would prioritize traffic calming, safety, and accessibility, while also accommodating closures for events, gatherings, celebrations. And one of the key things that we did add as a part of what we heard is incorporating a raised intersection to make the intersection feel more like a plaza and be integrated between future memorials and the People's Way site. The third value, centering the needs of the community of George Floyd Square, designing the streets with the neighborhood in mind. I think this is the theme I've tried to highlight, is restoring restoring and expanding access for residents and visitors and businesses, while supporting in the revitalization of some of the vacant storefronts and existing businesses. And then the last priority was ensuring access for residents and businesses, which includes the full access, as well as including access for emergency vehicles, as well as deliveries for the businesses in the area that don't have alternative solutions. So this is the full concept for the flexible open. And I've highlighted a lot of the aspects that are in there, but just a few more that I'd like to call attention to is really centering safety of people, specifically pedestrian safety, through traffic calming and including the full toolkit of items that we use through physical design infrastructure to have safe, accommodating, accessible space, narrowing travel lanes, curb extension, raised crossings, medians, traffic circles. We're really putting the whole toolkit here because traffic calming and safety in that space is one of the most highest priorities. One of the things that we didn't get a chance to highlight at the last dinner dialogue that we thought it'd be good to highlight here is when we say flexible open space, we didn't really provide much context to what that could be or what we would like to continue to work with the community on to really allow this space to be adaptable, to be serving businesses and residents, but also being closed for those bigger events and gatherings. I'm sharing a number of examples of gates that could include elements of art, community, and culture that could support this flexible nature. Here's a few examples, one from Portland, as well as Toronto, where they have types of gates or barriers that they worked with the community to integrate into the right-of-way. As well as there's even an example from Chicago Ave during the previous iteration of Chicago Ave when it used to be the Metrodome in that space where they had gates integrated into the right-of-way. Other examples I provided from San Francisco, nearby Hopkins on 8th Ave, as well as one from Indiana, and the latest one that shows more of a focus on art and integration of an activated space is from Hamilton, Ontario. The last segment I have focuses a little bit on transit. Metro Transit was a key partner in this, and transit definitely became a big theme through the community of like how the street could serve people who are transit dependent. And a part of this is all the D-line stations and access would be really respectful of existing and planned memorials, as Mary highlighted, and really provide that high quality experience for riders and community members while improving transit access. The stations would be located for the D-line at 5 as close to 38th as possible, just south of 38th Street, and really making it easier to access transfers from the Route 23, as well as finding safe places to cross the street to access that transit. The idea would be trying to find something that fits within the neighborhood, relying more on the small shelters, and even providing the opportunity to partner with the neighborhood to integrate arts on some of these shelters and partner with the community. And we've attached a couple of examples that have been used in North Minneapolis, as well as along Franklin, where Metro Transit has partnered with the community to integrate art into the shelters. With that, I'll be handing it over to Margaret for the last portion.
Welcome.
Mr. Chair, I know we're short on time. I'll go fast. The next steps to this process. First of all, thank you for your attention today on this presentation. One of the first things happening next is selecting the community owner for the People's Way to the RFQ that Rebecca talked about. Continuing to engage with artists on the current and future memorials. Then seeking council approval for the street concept that has been presented here today on November 21st at the Climate and Infrastructure meeting. Moving into design and engineering. Community engagement will continue throughout this process, both through construction and beyond. This is going to be an ongoing part of our work as a city, both with 38th Street Thrive and George Floyd Square. This timeline can show you the kind of overlapping and where things kind of are moving together, where we hit a new milestone, all of those things. It's in your LIMS file. I'm not going to read it to you since we are so short on time, but we have been definitely thinking about since 2022, 2021, how we move forward, the 5-year anniversary of George Floyd's murder, and then the street reconstruction and beyond. And so today's presenters are listed here, and Mr. Chair, I and the others stand for questions.
Thank you so much. I'll first open it up to the queue. We first have Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you so much, Chair Chavez. Thank you, COO Anderson Kelleher, and all for the presentation. Just want to ask on the timeline here, as the chair of the C&I committee, I feel like that inflection point, that decision point is moving pretty quickly. And I'm wondering if there's a willingness to put that decision off for a little while so that we can digest this information and spend more time with community learning about it. Also because we're in such a busy time with 2025 budget deliberations.
So, Mr. Chair and Councilmember Cashman, I'm just having Nathan come up to make sure I'm doing this correctly. I believe that if we don't hit the cycle here for the end of the year, then we're delaying the project into 2026 because of contracting.
Chair, Councilmember Cashman, I don't have the climate infrastructure schedule right in front of me, but I believe that pushes into January.
Yeah, this is the last committee. Next week will be the last committee meeting of the year.
Yeah, I would echo what Margaret said, is there definitely raises a lot of question about viability and schedule of what we proposed on the calendar.
Okay, well, thanks for, letting us know of that. I personally won't feel comfortable taking action on this on the 21st. And I think other council colleagues feel the same way, so maybe we can talk more at agenda setting tomorrow morning. Thanks.
Next up, we have, I'm sorry, we're trying to figure out the timing issue because we're still going to come back for Cow tomorrow at 2 p.m. So, because of the timing, and there's still other items. So, next up, we have Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. And, I want to just thank staff who have been working on this since 2020. Those 2 years are not even on this project timeline. 3 COOs, 2 public work directors, many staff engagement. Thousands of community members have been engaged in this over the past 4.5 years. Thousands. Hundreds in just the past 9 months. If we delay this project, that really dismisses all of that engagement of broad section of community members who want to see progress in their community, who deserve to see progress in their community. And so the work to design the memorial, the healing work, all of that continues. That doesn't stop. This is about how we treat the infrastructure of this community, which is 50 years overdue. Millions of dollars invested in transit to make sure that we can move our community members who are transit dependent to the things that they need to do. I cannot support a delay. I would offer up a community benefits agreement to ensure that we hold the community, the city, accountable for the concerns that the community is expressing. But to delay, to suggest that this is some kind of rush, we've been doing this. One of the speakers came up and said, 4.5 years, 5 months, and 38 days, I think they said. That's a long time. So I cannot support a delay.
Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. I had the opportunity to attend a community-led town hall that was also attended by hundreds of residents in George Floyd Square last Wednesday, and I just wanted to say thank you to the residents who held that space in anticipation of the city bringing forward this presentation that we're receiving today that largely did not reflect much of the feedback and expertise that they have provided over the course of the years in trying to have something be reflective of what they have advocated for almost 5 years. And I absolutely am committed to working with the council members who represent both that area, both Councilmember Jenkins and Chavez, to really support the alternative vision that those residents brought forward. And I believe there is a way to both include a community benefits agreement, but also I'm interested in seeing the pedestrian option as a potential pathway towards supporting both the ability to preserve the memorial, the businesses in the area, but also giving the community the time to be able to shape what's supposed to happen, especially in light of us literally having a public comment period about us not giving justice to a Black man and literally talking about, or the city that denied that justice to a Black man, then literally dictating how we're going to literally reconfigure an area where we still have not, it's just preposterous. And it just does not make sense that we really think we could displace. But either way, I'm here to figure out how we can support the proposal that folks brought forward and spoke to very eloquently last week. And if it is the will of the C&I committee to either delay or take up, we have time to figure this out. I did want to at least get it on record because I do know there was some discrepancy, and especially with the city attorneys, since we're going to have to approve a concept layout. And I just want to make sure we don't have these troubles again like we did with Hennepin Ave or Hennepin Reconstruction. If the city attorneys can just confirm, and I will make sure after this meeting to do my homework and look for the memo where the city attorneys, I believe, also confirmed that we do have this capability, but council do have the ability to amend concept layouts. Can the city attorneys please confirm that?
Let's see.
Nielsen.
Thank you, Chair. Councilmember Wansley, I would like to refresh my memory on the Hennepin Avenue experience. It's been a while, and I don't specifically recall. I don't staff C&I or its predecessor committees. So, but I will look at that today.
And I'll make sure to look up the memo because we had a bunch of unnecessary fights about that because I think the charter at that time was very clear that it gave council the ability to do so. And then there was a memo sent, I believe, by CAO Anderson that crystallized that. And I'll follow up also with CVP Chuck Ty, who I think also led the charge to get clarity on that, just so that we all know what our capabilities are going into that C&I meeting in case we need to make some amendments. And it sounds like CAO Nelson, you'll also get some clarity on that. I also wanted to just get some follow-up on the conservation piece of this presentation. This is another confusing part for me of seeing the city insert itself in places where it just feels uncomfortable. We know a lot of the artwork was done independently by the community in itself, and it's mostly been the community that has been conserving the artwork. And I'm so confused as to how the community or how the city is managing the conservation process and why. So I'm just trying to figure out how we landed ourselves in having any role in the conservation process.
Welcome up, Mary. Well, hi, Mary.
I thought you were looking at the clock.
We are running out of time. I do have a few words I'd like to share with my community as well, so.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Wansley, I think I have mixed feelings about how we use the word conservation on this project. And, so in order for the right-of-way project to happen, artworks need to, and other memorials need to be moved. And possibly moved to a temporary location within the square. This would also be an opportunity, if it is the artist's intent, for, if the artist wants conservation to happen, this would be an opportunity for conservation to happen. And then also to figure out how the work gets reintegrated into the new right-of-way. For example, if you look at the right-of-way design, the traffic circle might be a slightly different design than the current traffic circle. So the artist and the conservators might need to think about how that works. Like there might be a grade change, for example. Or if the artist chooses to reintegrate the small fists into the median designs, which are different than the current location, to think about, does the artwork need to be modified in order for that to happen? We have asked Rise and Remember to partner with us on this process, and we are continuing to be open to that. And we'll ask them to comment on all plans and participate to the degree that they want to. But if the road project moves forward, some work with the art, and all of our work by policy, when someone works with an existing artwork, by policy requires a conservator and the artist to collaborate on that together.
So just quick clarity on that. So if Rise and Remember did not collaborate, then the city would essentially, I guess through a bid process, figure out or hire or bring on a conservator to do something or move that artwork during the construction phase.
Rise and Remember regularly removes works from the site.
No, that's not the question I asked. The question I asked, if Rise and Remember did not collaborate, so taking that to the side, and the process, the concept plan was moved forward, then the city would then, through an RFP process, bring on a conservator to manage the artwork.
To work with the artists, we have to follow the artist's intent. That is what guides all conservation, is the artist's intent.
Do you know who the artists are?
I don't know who all of the artists are. I know who some of the artists are. I know the conservators know the artists, and we will keep reaching out to them.
So again, you would then bring on a conservator. You will hire someone to then manage the art. The city would.
As part of the construction project. I just want to say this does not impact the art and memorials that are out there that wouldn't be affected by the construction project, like all the murals on the buildings, the work at the People's Way, just the art in the right-of-way, and memorials.
No, you're answering the question. I just want, again, to highlight just how uncomfortable and offensive, again, around the city inserting itself of holding, touching, messing with anything around art produced by the people during a protest. So just wanted to name that. And I know Councilmember Chavez has many comments to say. We'll deal with this in many more weeks. This is not the end of this.
All right. I just want to start by thanking our community members that are here today advocating for a different vision at the corner of George Floyd Square. I also happen to represent George Floyd Square, and I think oftentimes that's forgotten by the public. When I ran for city council, one of the few reasons for that was because I didn't support the city's process on how they just opened George Floyd Square. It was wrong, it was inhumane, and it did not take in consideration the feeling and pain of people that they experienced in the summer of 2020. It's the same feeling that residents in my ward feel at the Roof Depot site, and it's the same feeling that residents in surrounding neighborhoods feel about the lack of investment, honestly, the disinvestment of these communities of color in South Minneapolis. And it's exhausting to sit here week after week, continuing to hear the pain of residents, not only in Ward 9, but in Ward 8, about the city's process, the lack of actual authentic engagement, and honestly, not even just engagement, but what is the substance? What funding, what livability, what support are we gonna bring into these neighborhoods besides just saying we're gonna tear up a street and not address the rent prices that are increasing in our neighborhoods, not address the economic corridor, or not even implement and fund, there's maybe some implementation, but not even fund the actual 38th Street Thrive Plan. I also want to remind us of why we're here today. The Minneapolis Police Department, yes, the Minneapolis Police Department murdered George Floyd. And they continue to take the lives of our community members in the city of Minneapolis. And sadly, the presentation that we had before us today did not even offer a drop or component about police accountability and the next steps the police department is going to take to address its racist and toxic culture that has been found in many reports. The reason we are here today is because we have a police department that was found to racially discriminate against Black and Native residents in Minneapolis. Yes, that's right. Last week, the day after the election, I attended a community meeting regarding the future of George Floyd Square. And in that meeting, community members were rightfully frustrated with the city's process and end product that seems to sanitize the square and forgets the racial reckoning 38th and Chicago had all over the world. This isn't just a corner. I do not support the city's plan. I believe that we can find a new pathway forward. And I think that we only have one shot to get this right.
That's right. Yes, come on.
One opportunity to support the residents in the surrounding neighborhoods, and one opportunity to change this world, and this plan ain't it. Yes. So best believe that we're gonna fight, yes. We're gonna push back, and we're gonna bring a new vision forward because I'm tired of this too. Next up, we have Councilmember Vita, and then again we have Councilmember Jenkins, and then I wanna outline the next steps in the process, which means keeping this item in the agenda because folks might still have questions for staff, so keeping it for tomorrow. And then I'm gonna be moving 2 different items to a different committee date that was already originally planned for, and then one, we'll talk about it. But next up, Councilmember Vita.
Chair Chavez, I want to speak to something different than this item. I just wanted to give colleagues a heads up that Thursday I'm going to be bringing forward action to have a public hearing on the Labor Standards Board. You know, in listening to the council president today saying, you know, this is an institution that doesn't make it easy for people to engage with. I've had a lot of engagement just today about folks not feeling like they've been heard or seen around this Labor Standards Board. And so I am going to be working to bring action forward on Thursday to hopefully get some sort of a public hearing or public comment period for the people of Minneapolis to speak to the Labor Standards Board. Just wanted to give colleagues a heads up on that and let you know that's coming forward soon. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Vita. And last up on queue, we have Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. I really want to just challenge my colleagues to stop calling themselves progressives because every single progress people want to obstruct. That is not progress. That is digression. Thank you.
I think that comment was directed towards me.
Yes, directed towards my colleagues.
And
all of them who want to digress.
Thank you. I'll just note that as I mentioned in my previous comments, we have one opportunity to get this right, one opportunity to move forward and to address this issue at hand with a community-led vision that's actually going to get to the root causes of the issues impacting the neighborhoods. And I consider that progress because of the residents in the 4 neighborhoods surrounding the 38th Street Thrive area and the corridor deserve more. They deserve a plan that is going to meet their needs. They are tired of their rents increasing. They are tired of being displaced in their neighborhoods. And I've heard it from many members. What's the point of reconstructing a street if people are just going to lay there and sleep because there is no housing for people? I'm not against addressing and developing a plan, but I am against a plan without vision. So with that said, it's the next thing. What I will say is I'm going to keep this on the agenda, so I'm going to need some support from the clerks. Can I just not take any action and it's going to be considered perfect? So we're going to continue this item to 2 p.m. tomorrow, which is going to be an adjourned council meeting. Do I need a second for that? Okay, cool. The next thing we're going to do is postpone items number 4 and number 6 to the December 3rd meeting, which is the next committee of the whole meeting. Is there any objection to that? Great, thank you. And then the next thing I'll say is in the next adjourned meeting of the committee of the whole, we'll also have our council tracking report, which is item number 5. So both 3 and 5 will be in tomorrow's agenda. All right, any questions? Councilmember Palmisano.
Mr. Chair, just wanted to correct something. I believe you said 2 p.m., but on our calendars it says 1 p.m. tomorrow is the committee of the whole, so I just wanted to make sure that people knew that.
Yeah, thank you. And I believe that in the budget committee, we voted to have the budget committee at 1 p.m. So now for the public, this is going to be at 2 p.m. And yeah, thank you, Councilmember Palmisano. Okay. So on the motion to postpone item number 4 and 6 to the next meeting of the committee of the whole, which is December 3rd. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. That motion carries. And can I just get like consensus that folks are okay with not reading reports today and that we all just read it at home? Great. Okay. Tomorrow. Oh, we can do it tomorrow. Just kidding. We're good. Okay. With that, members, we're good to go? We've concluded all business to come before the committee today, and hearing no objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned.
Did you hear
Tomorrow.
Howard
Well, I
speak
already made
first?
motion.
Did you hear Howard D. speak first? I knew what these were.
It is
from England.
adjourning
It's like that white
to
ally
tomorrow
ship.
at 2 p.m. Correct.
It's not for black people. It's for white people to show their allyship to. It was back in after Brexit, like English hatred toward Haitians, and then people tried to like adopt that after Trump was elected. Would you remember? I mean, there's no reason why you wouldn't remember that.